Hey everyone, and welcome to another rapid fire review, this time for Ubisoft's Rise of the Ronin. 4 years later, we finally get to see Ubisoft's take on the setting and time period after Sucker Punch's Ghost of Tsushima took the foundation of Assassin's Creed and created one of the most beautiful and memorable games in the genre. Now, like all of the Ubisoft open world games before it, the world is open, but you kinda wish it were closed, as this dated, uninspired, and ugly-ass world in no way looks or belongs in the current generation of consoles. They've also made few changes to their lackluster writing style, and the original story they created, on top of the historical narrative, is just not very good. But I would like to hand it to them for creating a combat system that is far better than anything they've ever come up with. Look, it's not as intricate or as nuanced as Neo or the like, but it's still very good, especially for Ubisoft.
Hey man, sorry to interrupt, but this is actually the Team Ninja open world game, not the Ubisoft one. That comes out next year.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
Oh, well... Alright, welcome to another rapid fire review, this time for Team Ninja's disappointing foray into emulating an Ubisoft game, but with great combat. For its story, Rise of the Ronin takes place in the mid-19th century during the final years of the Edo period. The Tokugawa shogunate is at odds with anti-shogunate factions, displeased with the Western world's increasing influence. And our story follows the changes that Japan undergoes as it ends its feudal isolationism. It's an absolutely fascinating period with interesting characters and storylines, so Team Ninja had a really good base to build upon and had a compelling story of their own on top. Now, they didn't do that, but they still had a good base at least, so that's something. Even with how plainly the historical narrative is depicted, with characters just kind of standing next to each other, sometimes they're sitting, sometimes they have arms crossed, for variety, I was still interested with how the West's influence was splitting the country into two, and how the vast collection of characters were responding. You'll have several opportunities during the story to choose sides in the Civil War, and can even determine which allies go with you. Though the history is what it is, and Team Ninja's not really changing it, so the decision-making ends up feeling a little bit hollow. Especially when your side determines you must attack and kill a former ally and leader of the side you didn't choose, and you infiltrate their base and you kill all their men, you have an epic fight to defeat them, and then they just stand up and walk away with you watching. Or they'll just become your ally again with no consequence. Or even worse, you choose a side and conquer your enemies in a long mission and imprison your foes, only to have the very next mission be to kill all your current allies and rescue those chosen enemies who now want to be your allies again. I don't understand how they thought there would be any interest or tension here when no matter what you did, save like one time in the whole game, anything at all changed. The fights happen, you win, and then everyone just pops up and is now friends. Or if they're not friends, they just walk away until the next time you fight them, and they still won't die. Your character's story, the one laid on top of the history, isn't anywhere near as good. You're one of a pair of bonded warriors, and the two of you are set on a dangerous mission, and something goes wrong. The other warrior is lost, presumed dead, but then a mysterious figure shows up, roughly the same size and shape as the presumed dead bonded warrior. But now, they're inexplicably evil, and you spend the entire game fighting them to the death. But wait, no, not the death, as they just get up and walk away without explaining what they're up to or anything until the end, when you have a very serious decision to make, and you'll definitely care which decision is made, and you won't feel like this is all tacked on garbage, ruining the interesting history part of the game. Look, I don't mind tropes, the chosen one, enemies to allies, the quest, even love triangles are all classics for a reason. But when they're sloppily tacked on and implemented with no imagination and no intrigue, it just feels like you're wasting my time. Relationship building is another major focus here. It's all mostly optional, but you can pick up bits and pieces of the story through optional missions, gift giving, and dialogues. For those interested in the relationship managing aspect, this will be welcome. And for those who don't enjoy it, they can just simply leave it be, as it's not really forced upon you. The Ubisoft-esque open world is filled with icons to chase, but there really isn't much there. There are fast travel points, a few side quests, escort missions and the like, and some shops. You'll mostly be defeating bandit camps for fast travel points, but most of the time you're just going to spend trotting along on your awkward horse from cutscene to start missions. The world just felt unpolished compared to similar titles, and it would feel that way even if this was a PS4 game. But it's not. This is a PS5 exclusive, and $70, and I don't feel it's unreasonable to expect next-gen graphics and visuals, or at least content, and I absolutely did not get that. Ghost of Tsushima had a similar open world, content-wise at least, but the level of detail in that world and its polish had us immersed the entire time we played it, except 4 years ago and on a PS4. Here we get mostly washed-out gray color palette and an incredibly unimpressive environment the vast majority of the time you're playing this game. Now, with all that being said, I know what's important in these games. With Neo-style combat, I would play a game about Tinky Winky slaying his way through Teletubby Land if Team Ninja made it. And the combat here is great. Combat is fast-paced, and with the 3 starting difficulty settings, with a 4th even unlocking at the end, you can have it be as easy or as punishing as you like. It makes this a far more approachable game for people looking to get into Team Ninja games. You have 9 melee weapon types plus unarmed to choose from. Each type naturally has different moves and strengths and damage scaling with different stat types. These stats increase as you gain XP, depending on how you level up the stat point system. Now, there are some options here for a little customization, but by the end of the playthrough, most characters will have exactly the same things unlocked. The stances in the game are divided into Jin, Chi, and Ten, a basic rock, paper, scissors system that will change how effective your attacks are versus certain enemies. Each weapon can have multiple stances, plus you have a secondary weapon you can also switch to with multiple styles. The enemies will have little arrows letting you know if your stance is effective or ineffective against them, but this won't be something you constantly have to monitor and adjust to. It's a far simpler system than a Neo, and there was definitely times where I wanted that extra complexity and control. The mission structure is broken into short sections of basic bad guys with an elite, and then you get a save spot, and then more bad guys, an elite, and a save spot, so you get to the boss, who, honestly, you've probably fought 3 times for bad story writing purposes. The layouts for these, while extremely basic, allow you to tackle them however you want. Stealth assassinations, full Rambo, range combat, or you can just sprint past most enemies to save spots and fight the boss. The game is also very generous with the save spots throughout the entire game, again making this more approachable. I found the boss design here really good, and I rather enjoyed learning the movesets and what to dodge and parry, especially the first time they showed up as bosses. Any fatigue I had in seeing them again was purely from the stupid-ass reasons they were written into the area, rather than not wanting to fight them. These aren't all 1v1 duels either. Some are smaller skirmishes or multi-boss fights that if you choose, you can bring companions to, and they'll at least take some attention away from the other enemies. Because that's really all they can be relied on to do. Half the time they just stand there, doing nothing, or they seek out the closest fire to stand in and die. But they aren't worthless. Keeping the attention of foot soldiers, archers, or a second boss is certainly useful. They also serve as a second or third life, and can near instantly revive a down party member for the cost of a medicine pill. The loot system here is standard for Team Ninja. You get far too much of it, like hundreds and hundreds of pieces of useless shit all of the time. So don't get attached to anything that you are using or wearing, since you'll get upgrades every few minutes. You'll constantly be selling or disassembling the pieces for upgrade materials, except for when you're playing through the game, you really don't need to buy anything, outside of maybe some random gifts for companions, and upgrading seems to be a colossal waste, since a random t-shirt dropped by a street thief 15 minutes from now will be far better than upgrading whatever legendary named armor you have now. Even the set items, which I originally assumed would be rare, dropped constantly. So as long as the gear you're wearing is close to the max level you can equip, save the currency and materials for the endgame content. Speaking of which, the Testament of the Soul is the game's chapter select mechanic, where you'll be able to view past events in this sort of branching story. You can use it to explore past areas, finish old quests, or just retry missions on different difficulties. It's a great way to level up and get new equipment if you need it, and the midnight difficulty it offers at the end of the game was just the bit of humbling I needed after finishing the game. I always feel like this feature should be standard, mandatory in this type of game, FromSoft, For performance, even when prioritizing FPS, I got some stuttering or heavy drops in the frame rate, especially in busier towns, quite often while using the glider, and even sometimes in combat. It's nowhere near as bad as the release date of Wolong on PC, but again, this is a $70 game, with graphics that shouldn't be impressing anybody. It's exclusive to the PS5, so the excuse of it being hard to port things over is gone. The performance should have been far better here. So with all that being said, the quality of Rise of the Ronin is all over the place. I love the setting and the history. And it ran okay, with just some minor stuttering, but no real crashes. The story that came up with a soap opera, and I don't think it was a great one. And I really don't like the open world, or think the visual presentation of the game is very good. But I love the combat, even if it has been simplified. Rating this one was tough. The things we know Team Ninja for are well crafted here, and existing fans are going to get what they want from the game, and perhaps will ignore the shortcomings. But for an overall experience, I think this game is a 7 out of 10, or on our scale, what we call a good game. There's quality to be sure, but the underdeveloped open world, poor graphics, lackluster original story, and simplified combat systems really hold this game back from the greatness that we know Team Ninja is capable of. Thanks so much for watching this Rapid Fire review. I believe the next Rapid Fire is going to be Stellar Blade, so keep an eye out for that one. And we shall see you on the next Angry Joe Show.